Hello. My name is Marcella Ellison, and 3 weeks after heart surgery, my mother made me move my hospital bed so she could fit a buffet table. I thought I was coming home to rest. Turns out, I was coming home to be erased. The wind smelled like rain and pine as I pulled into the driveway of the house I grew up in. The shingles looked the same, though the paint had dulled to the color of dust. My heartbeat thudded against the scar beneath my blouse. I shouldn't have been driving yet, 3 weeks after heart surgery, but I told myself home was where you healed. When I opened the front door, warmth and noise struck me at once. The smell of roasted meat, wax candles, and perfume mingled in the air. Ribbons hung from the ceiling fan, and half-inflated balloons sagged against the curtains. For a second, I thought I had walked into someone else's celebration. Finally, my mother's voice carried from the kitchen, sharp enough to cut through the clatter of dishes. "Put your bag somewhere out of the way. Your bed is taking too much space near the counter, we need that spot for the buffet." I stopped in the hallway. "My bed?" My voice sounded smaller than I intended. She appeared in the doorway, still wearing her church pearls. "Yes, dear. I had your brother move it yesterday. We'll put the trays there. You can sleep in the laundry room tonight, it's only for a day." My chest tightened. "I just got back from surgery, Mom." I thought. "You thought wrong," she interrupted, waving a wooden spoon like a judge's gavel. "We all have to make sacrifices. Seraphine's party is important. She has people coming who can change her future. You understand that, don't you?" I nodded, though every breath scraped against my ribs. She turned away before I could answer. In the living room, gold foil balloons spelled happy birthday above a row of polished champagne glasses. My sister, Seraphine, glided past in a silk dress the color of cream, her phone raised like a mirror to the world. "Smile, Mom. This light is perfect." She didn't even glance my way. I set my suitcase beside the staircase and pressed my hand to the wall to steady myself. Each heartbeat thudded too hard. I told myself to rest for a minute, but my mother's voice rang out again. "Marcella, help me with the appetizers. You've always been our reliable one." Reliable. The word landed like a weight I'd carried since childhood. Reliable meant the one who filled in the gaps, the one who stayed quiet, the one who never asked for thanks. I moved slowly into the kitchen. My father stood by the sink, pretending to rinse glasses that were already clean. He didn't look at me. He rarely did when Mom's tone sharpened. "Where do you need me?" I asked. My voice sounded calm, even though something in me was unraveling. "Just slice the bread," she said briskly. "And try not to sweat on it. You look flushed." "I'm tired," I murmured. "Maybe I should sit down for a bit." She didn't turn around. "Don't start with excuses, Marcella. You've always been the dependable one. Let's keep it that way." I wanted to tell her that dependable people die quietly, that their hearts give out while everyone else keeps celebrating, but the words stayed stuck in my throat. I sliced the bread, each motion slower, deliberate. My hand trembled once, the knife nicked the crust, not my skin. I wished it had been the other way around, pain would at least prove I was still there. From the dining room, Seraphine's laughter spilled out like champagne. "Mom, does the camera catch the banner? Make sure it looks classy, not cheap." "Don't worry, honey," my mother cooed, her tone instantly soft. "Everything will be perfect." I leaned against the counter, listening. Perfect. That word never included me. The clock above the stove ticked louder than usual. I stared at the line of plates, each waiting for food I hadn't even started cooking yet. It wasn't just a birthday party. It was a presentation, Seraphine's chance to show her sponsors how flawless her life looked. When I finally spoke, it surprised even me. "Maybe I can just sit this one out." Mom turned, lips pressed tight. "Don't be ridiculous. We can't cancel now. You'll be fine. The heart's like any other muscle, it needs exercise." Her logic made no sense, but that never stopped her before. I walked into the living room to catch my breath. The chandelier reflected in the glass window, throwing spots of light across the furniture. Every reflection showed Seraphine smiling, Mom arranging flowers, Dad nodding. None of them showed me. "Marcella." Mom's voice again. "The tablecloth, fix the wrinkles before the guests see it." I knelt to smooth the fabric. My scar pulled tight under my ribs. A bead of sweat rolled down my spine. The laughter from upstairs sounded like it came from strangers. My mind drifted to the hospital, the steady beep of machines, the nurses who called me by my first name. There, I had felt visible. Here, I was back to being part of the wallpaper. "Good girl," Mom said when I finished. The words were sugar on broken glass. Outside, car doors slammed. Voices rose in greeting. The guests had arrived. My pulse quickened. I wasn't ready for an audience, but there was no hiding. Seraphine swept down the stairs, perfume cloud following her. "Marcella, be useful and grab the gift bags." I obeyed without thinking. Habit had its own leash. When the first guests entered, I stepped aside. Someone said, "Your home looks wonderful, Mrs. Ellison. You've outdone yourself." Mom laughed. "It's a family effort." A man in a navy blazer glanced at me, then back to her. "And the help is excellent. She's very attentive." Mom didn't correct him. She smiled. "Thank you. We're lucky to have her." Something inside me went still. The sound of laughter blurred. My hands clenched around the paper bags until the edges cut my palms. I kept smiling because that's what reliable people do. Dinner music started. Seraphine twirled in front of her guests, showing off the dress she'd designed for charity. Cameras flashed. Every lens aimed at her. I stood at the edge of the room, invisible, breathing through the dull ache in my chest. It hit me then, the entire event was a facade, a performance. I wasn't family tonight, I was staging crew. My existence kept the illusion alive. I looked at my mother, radiant under the warm light. She caught my eye for half a second, then looked away as if I were part of the furniture. The ache in my chest spread higher, pressing against my throat. I wanted to leave, but leaving would cause a scene. And scenes, in our family, were sins. I placed the last of the glasses on the table and stepped back. My arms felt heavy, my breath shallow. The guests clapped as Seraphine began her speech about gratitude and family values. Her voice carried through the house, smooth and trained for cameras. I couldn't have done any of this without my parents' love and support. She paused for effect. "Family means everything." Everyone applauded. No one noticed I had quietly leaned against the wall for balance. My mother whispered to my father, "Make sure Marcella doesn't faint in front of them." He nodded but didn't move. I thought of saying something, one sentence to crack their perfect shell, but the words wouldn't come. My mouth tasted of metal and silence. When the speech ended, I walked outside to breathe. The air was cool, damp with the promise of rain. Across the lawn, the windows glowed gold, every one of them showing a world that looked perfect from a distance. Inside, laughter roared again. I pressed a hand over my chest and let the truth settle like weight on my ribs. I came home to heal. Turns out, home was where I got broken again. The sound of laughter followed me back inside before I was ready to hear it. The air smelled of butter and perfume, too thick to breathe. I told myself I would stay quiet, just for an hour, just until the guests left, but quiet has always been a trap I built for myself. A man in a gray suit stood near the wine table, swirling his glass of rose. He squinted toward me, then whispered to the woman beside him, "New help?" "She looks exhausted." They both laughed under their breath, the kind of laugh that hides behind politeness. I almost corrected them. Instead, I smiled because my mouth didn't know how to do anything else. My hands trembled around the tray I carried. I waited for my sister to say something, to introduce me, to fix the mistake, but Seraphine only glanced up from her phone. Her lipstick was the exact color of confidence. "Oh," she said, voice dripping honey. "That's just my sister. She's good at hosting. Always has been." The words stung sharper than insult. Good at hosting. It meant I belonged in the background, not the family portrait. I turned away before anyone saw my face change. In the kitchen, my mother was wiping the counter as if it owed her gratitude. "Why are you standing there?" she asked without looking up. "Go put this on." She tossed an apron toward me, faded, stained from years of holidays. The strap was frayed, the fabric stiff with old grease. "I don't need it," I said quietly. My voice sounded small, like someone asking permission to breathe. "Still fits, doesn't it?" she said. "That's good. Means you're still useful." The room tilted slightly. My chest pulled tight against the stitches under my ribs. I wanted to tell her the surgeon said no lifting, no bending, no stress. But I knew how that conversation would go. Mom would talk about how she cooked through her own gallbladder surgery. How women in this family didn't rest, they endured. So I tied the apron strings behind my back. The knot pressed into the tender place of my spine. I didn't wear it to serve. I wore it to see how deep this charade would go. Get the bread from the oven, she said, handing me mitts. And smile when you bring it out. People notice these things. As I carried the tray through the doorway, heat pricked my skin. The dining room buzzed with conversation. Every guest looked dressed for a magazine spread, pearl earrings, manicured hands clutching glasses. They talked about property taxes and lake houses, about how lucky Seraphine was to have such a supportive family. No one looked at me. Not directly. When they did, it was with the kind of glance people give a server who stands too long by the table. Marcella, over here, Seraphine called, waving her phone. Smile for a quick story. I turned halfway, blinking under the flash. In the photo preview, my face was caught mid-motion, blurry, half cut off. She posted it anyway. Caption: family teamwork makes everything sparkle. I wondered if any of her followers could see the scar beneath my blouse, the one that throbbed with every breath. Don't slouch, Mom hissed when she passed behind me. Posture, Marcella. You look weak. I straightened. My back ached. My heart fluttered, an uneven drum. I thought about the hospital bed I'd left behind, the beep of machines that had made me feel safe because they proved I was still alive. Here, surrounded by family, I wasn't sure anymore. A woman I didn't know leaned across the table. Your daughter Seraphine is just radiant, she told my mother. You must be so proud. Oh, I am, Mom said. She's always been our shining light. I waited for her to add something about me, even a small sentence. She didn't. The silence felt deliberate. When I set down the bread, a man joked, well, every star needs someone to keep the lights on. Everyone laughed. Even Dad, soft and embarrassed, looked at me and smiled apologetically before lowering his eyes again. The noise dulled around me. My head buzzed, my heart thumped too loud for the room. I whispered an excuse and stepped back into the hallway. In the mirror near the stairs, I caught my reflection. The apron hung crooked, streaked with flour. My cheeks were pale. My eyes looked like a stranger's. From the dining room, Seraphine's voice floated out, cheerful and sharp. Mom, make sure she doesn't mess up the dessert. Presentation is everything. Mom called after me, Marcella, where are you going? We still need to bring out the cake. I turned around slowly. You have plenty of help. Her mouth twitched. Don't start this again. Start what? I asked. My voice didn't rise. It was too tired to rise. The attitude, she said. People notice. You make it uncomfortable for your sister. That was always her defense, other people's comfort. My discomfort was invisible as long as the table sparkled. I'm just tired, I said. It's not attitude. She sighed dramatically, the sound she used when the world failed to meet her expectations. You could have stayed in the hospital if you wanted pity. I stood still. The air between us thickened. She turned away first. Back in the kitchen, I stared at the counter. Every inch of it was covered, platters, empty wine bottles, a cake half frosted. I reached for a towel and wiped at a stain that wasn't there. My hands kept moving because stopping would mean thinking. Outside, thunder grumbled. A storm was building somewhere close. The smell of ozone mixed with vanilla icing. Seraphine peeked in. There you are. Mom's getting nervous. Smile, okay? We don't need another mood on camera. Another mood? I asked. You know what I mean, she said, rolling her eyes. Don't be weird. Just be pleasant. Pleasant. The word sounded like a muzzle. She left before I could answer, her heels clicking like applause. I removed the apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the counter. The knot mark still pressed into my skin. For a moment, I just stood there, listening to the muffled hum of the party, the laughter, the music, the sound of my own absence. Then I noticed something strange. My name wasn't on any of the place cards. Every seat had a neat label written in silver ink, Mom, Dad, Seraphine, Mr. and Mrs. Geller, Pastor Lewis. But nowhere was Marcella. I picked up a card, flipped it over, checked the rest. Nothing. The realization came quietly, like rain slipping through a crack. I hadn't been forgotten. I'd been edited out. The door creaked behind me. Mom appeared again, arms crossed. Why aren't you wearing the apron? It's dirty, I said. Then find another. Don't stand there doing nothing. I'm not doing nothing, I whispered. I'm trying not to faint. She looked me up and down. Drama doesn't suit you. You're not 16 anymore. The words stung because they were lazy, practiced. She'd used them all my life whenever I reached the edge of exhaustion. From the other room came Seraphine's voice, "Mom, we need more champagne." Mom brushed past me without another glance. I leaned against the counter, breathing through the ache in my chest. My pulse fluttered against the scar. The thunder rolled again, closer this time. The power flickered, the chandelier blinked. In that half-second of darkness, I saw myself reflected in the oven door, apron gone, posture slumped, eyes empty. When the light steadied, I straightened. I walked to the sink, turned on the water, and let it run cold over my hands. The noise drowned out the party for a moment. It was almost peaceful. Then, from the dining room, someone laughed again. "The help's taking her time, huh?" I closed my eyes. My hands gripped the counter until my knuckles whitened. Inside, something shifted, quietly, powerfully, permanently. I wasn't part of the picture. I was the hand holding the frame steady. A child's voice broke the kitchen silence. I didn't see him at first. He stood by the pantry door, holding a paper plate piled with cheese cubes. His eyes were round, unblinking. Is she being punished? The question wasn't cruel. It was the kind of innocence that slices deeper than any insult. I blinked. My hands were still damp from the sink, my fingers aching from gripping the counter too hard. He took a bite of cheddar, still watching me. "Mom said you're always in trouble. But I didn't see you do anything." I crouched slightly, enough to meet him at eye level. Sometimes grown-ups punish people in ways they don't admit. He frowned. "That doesn't sound fair." "It's not," I said. "But fair doesn't always live here." He nodded slowly, as if he understood something too big for his shoes. Then he wandered off, plate in hand, back into the laughter and champagne bubbles. I stayed crouched for a moment longer. My knees ached when I stood. That ache stayed with me, tight behind my eyes, beneath my ribs, in every breath I hadn't dared release since arriving. Someone made a toast in the next room. I caught my name in the wave of clinking glasses. No, I didn't. That was wishful thinking. "Dot to Seraphine, who brings light to every room she enters," a man said. Applause followed. I walked toward the dining room doorway. From where I stood, I could see the edge of the photo backdrop, pastel streamers, a gold foil balloon arch, a sign that read, "Gratitude. Grace. Growth." I had set it up that morning while they argued over centerpiece color schemes. No one called me into the photo. I wasn't out of frame, I was never considered. My hand slipped on the edge of a serving platter. The china caught the lip of the table and slid. I reached, too late. It shattered on the floor, sending a hush rippling through the room. The silence that followed wasn't just about the plate. It was about the interruption. Claret was the first to speak. Her tone was more accusation than concern. "Do you always have to ruin things when it's about your sister?" I stood frozen. The pieces of porcelain at my feet looked like a map of everything I used to be allowed to feel. Seraphine appeared at her mother's side, arms crossed lightly. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. "Maybe she's just tired," she said sweetly. "She's been fragile lately." Fragile. That word made my stomach twist. Not recovering. Not healing. Fragile. As if I were a broken ornament someone felt obliged to keep on the shelf. I knelt to pick up the shards. My fingers brushed the sharpest piece, but I didn't pull away. Claret turned to one of the guests with a practiced chuckle. She always had a flair for drama. Even as a girl. "Remember the spelling bee? Tears over a second-place ribbon?" I looked up. My hand clenched a broken piece. "You should sit," Seraphine said, laying a hand on my shoulder. It wasn't kindness. It was choreography. "I'm fine," I muttered. "No, really," she insisted, louder, for the guests to hear. "We'll take it from here. You rest." There was applause again, this time for her. The way she saved the moment. I walked away without looking back. In the kitchen, I ran cold water over my hands. My fingers throbbed. My chest felt tight again. Moments later, Claret entered behind me, closing the door with a soft click. "We've been patient, Marcella," she said in a low voice. "But this attitude, it's exhausting. You need to remember your place." "My place?" I turned, water still dripping from my hands. "Yes," she said. "You can't keep doing this. Making every event about your feelings. You were always sensitive, but this is too much." I bit the inside of my cheek. The pain kept me grounded. I didn't ask to be center stage, I said slowly. I asked to be allowed to exist. You're not a child anymore, she replied. Stop acting like one. Seraphine's the one who's worked for this. You're the one who walked away from everything. The words struck with the precision of a scalpel. You're right, I said. I did walk away. I thought I could come back and be seen as more than a shadow. Claret's eyes narrowed. Well, if you keep behaving like this, people will talk. They'll think something's wrong with you. I exhaled sharply. People were already talking. But not the way she feared. They whispered about the daughter in the apron, the one with eyes too tired for her age. They wondered why no one stepped in when she dropped the platter. Why no one checked the cut on her finger. I looked down at my reflection in the sink. Water pooled in the basin. I saw my face there, not fragile, not tired. Just done. Not defeated. Done. I wiped my hands on a towel. I'm not ruining the party, I said, voice quiet but sure. I just stopped pretending I wasn't ruined. The water in the sink had stopped running, but the ringing in my ears hadn't. My hands were pale, trembling slightly as I braced against the counter. The room tilted, just enough to make me grab for the edge. The voices in the dining room blurred into a low hum, laughter clinking against glass. I pressed a palm over my heart and felt it stutter, uneven and wrong. The doctor's words echoed in my head like a warning I'd tried to forget. No stress, no heavy lifting, no standing longer than 30 minutes. 30 minutes. I'd been upright for nearly 4 hours. The lights above me flickered. Mom, I called softly, but my throat barely made sound. Claret entered without looking at me, her arms full of plates and half-eaten appetizers. What now? I need to lie down, I whispered. I can't breathe right. She didn't even glance my way. Doctor gave you an opinion. I make decisions in this house. Her words hit harder than the pain in my chest. It's not an opinion, it's medical. Medical, theatrical, it all sounds the same coming from you, she muttered, setting the plates down with a loud clatter. Don't ruin your sister's night. I wanted to argue. I wanted to scream that I was drowning in my own heartbeat, but no sound came out. The air felt thick as syrup. My knees weakened, and I reached for the counter again, missing it this time. Mom, I tried again, but she was already walking away. The room swayed. I saw the doorway blur, the light smear into gold streaks. I stumbled toward the back patio, one hand sliding along the wall for balance. The floor felt uneven, as if the house itself was pushing me out. Cool air hit my face when I opened the door. For a second, I thought it would steady me. It didn't. My body folded forward, my hand gripping the porch railing before slipping. The sound of footsteps came from next door. Marcella? Nadine's voice, steady, older, familiar. She must have seen the commotion through the window. I tried to answer, but only air came out. Marcella, she shouted now, running across the yard. The grass was wet from a brief rain, and her shoes slapped against the concrete. By the time she reached me, I was already on my knees. My vision flickered, her face, the porch light, the blurred outline of my mother's dress in the doorway. She needs an ambulance. Nadine's voice cut through the evening. Claret's tone followed, smooth and dismissive. Don't be dramatic. She does this sometimes. Even half-conscious, I heard it. Heard the calm cruelty wrapped in manners. Nadine ignored her. Call 911, she said to someone behind her, maybe a neighbor or one of the guests spilling outside to watch. Now. She'll be fine, Claret snapped. It's anxiety. She's always been like this, works herself up and expects attention. My body wanted to protest, but it didn't have the strength. My chest burned, every inhale was shallow, ragged. She's turning white, Nadine said sharply. If you won't call, I will. There was a pause, a short, ugly silence filled with Claret's pride and my fading pulse. Then the sound of dialing. I lay there, half curled on the cold porch boards. Somewhere above me, someone said my name, but it sounded far away. Inside, the music still played. Through the open window, I heard Seraphine laughing, unaware, or pretending not to notice. She would rather let me die than admit she pushed too far, I thought, the words forming somewhere between pain and disbelief. When the paramedics arrived, Nadine stayed beside me, her hand on my shoulder. You're okay, honey. They're here now. Just breathe. Claret hovered near the door, arms crossed. You're making this worse. I told her not to overreact. Overreact. Nadine shot back. Her pulse is barely there. She's fine, my mother insisted. She's doing this to embarrass me. To make everything about her, again. The paramedics ignored her. One of them knelt, checking my wrist for a pulse. Ma'am, we need space. Claret didn't move. This is ridiculous. They pushed past her anyway. The man's voice blurred into instructions I couldn't follow: oxygen, vitals, transport. Then Nadine said something that cut through everything. It's okay, Marcella. I'm staying with you. For the first time in a long time, I believed someone meant it. As they lifted me onto the stretcher, I caught a final glimpse of my mother's face. She looked more inconvenienced than afraid. Her hands were clasped tightly, like she was praying for the ambulance to leave faster. I wanted to tell her she had already won, that I was too tired to keep fighting for a place in a family that only valued my silence. Instead, I closed my eyes. The siren wailed, sharp and distant, echoing against the hills. Later, through the fog of oxygen and motion, I heard Nadine's voice again. They've got you, sweetheart. You're safe now. And I thought, this is what safety feels like, not comfort, not love, but someone refusing to look away. When I drifted in and out of consciousness, I felt the cold against my fingers and realized the truth. Someone had finally chosen me over convenience. I collapsed, and still, I was called dramatic. When I opened my eyes, the ceiling was the same shade of off-white I remembered, but the corners were unfamiliar. Someone had moved the furniture. The shelves were gone, replaced by floating makeup organizers and pastel wall art that read, "Choose Joy." It took a full minute to realize where I was. My old bedroom. Or what was left of it. My chest ached, not from the surgery this time, but from something slower, like my ribs were folding inward, caving under the weight of erasure. I sat up, carefully, every muscle tight, my fingers still tingling. A blanket lay across my lap, thin, decorative, not meant to comfort. On the dresser was a glossy card printed in silver script. The Seraphine family cordially invites you to an evening of light and grace. I scanned the names listed. Claret and Ellison, front and center. A dozen guests beneath them. Sponsors. Local press. Not mine. My name wasn't there. I leaned forward, reading it again, like maybe the ink had skipped. But no. I wasn't on the list. Not even in the footnote. Downstairs, the music had softened. The party was winding down, laughter trailing off into polite goodbyes and shoes clicking against the hardwood floor. I stood slowly, limbs heavy, and shuffled toward the stairs. Each step hurt more than it should have. My body was working overtime to pretend it was fine. In the living room, Seraphine stood near the fireplace, adjusting her hair in her phone's front camera. She tilted her head, smiled, then posted something. I caught a glimpse of the caption. "Thanks Mom and Dad for everything. This night was perfect." My face was in the photo, barely. Fuzzy. Caught mid-turn, off to the side. Like I had photobombed a moment I was never part of. I swallowed hard, walked toward her. "Hey," I said, softly. "Do you think you could take that down?" "I don't." She looked up. Her smile was painted on, a shade too bright. "You looked kind of pale in the photos, so I used a filter. Hope that's okay." I opened my mouth, then closed it. She went on, tapping her phone. "Anyway, you looked fine. Just not front and center." I turned away before she could say more. The air felt thick. The scent of leftover champagne and perfume clung to everything. Back upstairs, I closed the door behind me. The new pink curtains didn't match the old wallpaper. My bookshelf was gone. So was the wooden chest I'd kept since I was 10. In its place, rows of Seraphine's hair products. Designer perfume. A ring light sat in the corner. I reached for the dresser drawer. Inside, a single item, a silver bracelet. My bracelet. The one I gave her for her 7th birthday because Mom forgot to buy her a gift. She'd cried that day, and I didn't know how to fix it, so I slipped it off my wrist and said, "You can have mine. You're prettier anyway." She'd worn it in every school photo after that. I'd almost forgotten. Now, it sat in a drawer in a room that wasn't mine anymore. I lay back on the bed, the ache crawling higher in my chest. How do you grieve being replaced without ever having died? Footsteps passed in the hallway. Claret's voice drifted past. "Marcella's fine. Just being sensitive again." Sensitive. Dramatic. Fragile. The family trifecta of dismissal. I sat up again, rage bubbling beneath my ribs. Downstairs, Seraphine was doing a live Q&A. "My family is my everything," she said to the camera. "We support each other unconditionally." I opened my phone and watched her face. The comments rolled in. Goals. Inspiring. You're so lucky. I could have written the truth in one sentence. But I didn't. Not yet. I reached for my bag, where it had been left untouched in the corner. Inside, my journal, a half-used bottle of medication, and a folder. The hospital release forms. My name. My condition. The line where they left the emergency contact blank. I hadn't been forgotten. I had been omitted. There's a difference. The first is carelessness. The second is intention. I curled up under the blanket and stared at the ceiling, its tiny cracks spidering out like the fault lines in my body. I cooked the feast. They erased my name from the table. A soft sound stirred at my door, a quiet whimper, like a question wrapped in fur. I opened it slowly, unsure what I'd find, and there he was. The dog. Curled up beside the frame, ears low, tail thumping once when our eyes met. He stepped in without waiting, as if the space between us didn't require permission. I knelt down stiffly, still sore, and pressed my forehead gently to his. "You're the only one in this house who comes when I disappear." His presence calmed something in me. Something raw. Something worn to the bone. Downstairs, laughter still floated through the vents, softer now, thinning like fog at dawn. I heard the cling of dishes, Seraphine's voice humming along to some playlist she always used for events. It was the kind of curated joy that never left room for mess. Then came the knock. Not gentle. Sharp. Controlled. "Your father says you're being dramatic," Claret called through the door. "Come down and help clean." I stayed seated on the edge of the bed, hand resting on the dog's back. The silence from me wasn't defiance. It was finality. The door creaked open anyway. She stood there in her heels, arms crossed, face unreadable but rehearsed. "Don't make me ask twice." I stood. Slowly. My legs still shaky. My breath shallow. But I followed her downstairs, not because I owed her anything, but because I needed to see, once and for all, what they would do with the version of me that no longer obeyed. The kitchen was brighter than it needed to be. Too many lights. Too many reflections in stainless steel. Seraphine turned when I entered, holding the cake platter with a smirk that never reached her eyes. "Dad says to bring this out," she said. "It's your turn." I looked at the platter. Then at her. Then at Claret, who was already watching like a hawk. "I'm not doing that," I said. Calm. Steady. Unshaken. The words fell into the room like a dropped glass. Ellison appeared behind them, more shadow than man. His voice was quieter, but it cut just the same. "Don't embarrass us, Marcella. This is family." He reached for my wrist. Not harsh. Not violent. But firm enough to be felt. I pulled back, not out of fear, but out of clarity. "You've done that part already," I said. The guests who remained shifted, eyes darting away. No one stepped in. They never did. Claret hissed under her breath, "Go upstairs before you ruin everything." Her voice was tighter than usual. Controlled, but cracking. "No," I said. "I think I'll leave." Seraphine laughed too loudly. "Don't be dramatic." The same word again. Always the same word. I walked toward the door. The room was too quiet behind me. I reached for the knob. The dog trotted after me, silent as ever. "Leave him," Ellison snapped. "He stays." I paused. The dog looked between us, ears up. I knelt beside him, ran my hand over his fur one last time. "Stay," I whispered. "You don't deserve this either." I stepped outside. The night air wrapped around me like something holy. Cool. Honest. Mine. Behind me, the door clicked shut. I kept walking, past the flower beds I used to weed every summer, past the mailbox with my father's name carved too deep. My phone buzzed in my back pocket. Over and over. I pulled it out. Missed calls. Claret. Seraphine. Ellison. None said, "Are you okay?" One said, "You're making a scene." Another, "You need to come back and apologize." And then, finally, one from Seraphine, "Delete the photo of the cake. It's not your moment." I sat on the curb, just outside the range of their porch lights. The house looked golden from the outside, like a memory someone else was allowed to keep. My hands shook, but not from weakness. From the adrenaline of letting go. I stared at the screen, heart pounding. I could block them all. I could vanish like they always wished I would. Instead, I opened the last unread message. I saw what happened. Call me Ivy. A name I hadn't spoken in years. Someone who had once looked at me and said, "You deserve to be the main character in your own life." Maybe it was time to find out if she still meant it. They didn't drag me out. They freed me by showing who they really were. The rain hadn't stopped all night. By morning, it had turned steady, whispering against the windows like a conversation I wasn't supposed to hear. I sat at the kitchen table in my apartment, still in the clothes I'd slept in, nursing coffee gone cold. The phone on the counter blinked with new notifications, voicemails, texts, missed calls. 38 in total. Most were from my mother. A few from Seraphine. One from my father. None of them said the words I needed to hear. I scrolled through anyway. The first message was my mother's voice, brittle and sharp. "You owe us an apology for storming out. You embarrassed your sister. You embarrassed all of us." The next came from Seraphine, coated in sugar. "Delete that picture of me. It wasn't your moment, Marcella. You looked upset. It ruins the vibe." Even her shame had a brand name. I deleted both messages, then stopped at the pinned text on top. I saw what happened. "Call me." I hesitated. Ivy's name brought back college memories, late-night debates, borrowed sweaters, the one person who once told me, "You don't have to earn being loved." I hit call before I could overthink it. She answered on the second ring. "Marcella," she said softly. "I didn't say anything last night because I didn't know what to say. But I filmed it. All of it. They touched you, and you didn't even look steady on your feet. That was wrong." For a moment, I couldn't breathe. "Ivy, why?" "I wanted proof," she said simply. "In case they tried to rewrite what happened." Proof. That word landed like a pulse. Not gossip. Not pity. Evidence. "Send it to me," I said quietly. "Are you sure?" "Yes." The video arrived seconds later. I pressed play. The screen lit with the familiar room, gold balloons, champagne glasses, my mother's perfect smile. Then me. The camera caught my father's hand gripping my wrist, my sister turning away, the way I stumbled. I watched myself walk out the door, shoulders slumped, the dog trying to follow. It felt like watching my own funeral, everyone performing grief without actually losing me. "Ivy," I whispered, "thank you." "You don't have to thank me," she said. "Just do something with it." I ended the call. My heart felt calm in a way it hadn't in months. Not peaceful. Just clear. The phone buzzed again, another voicemail. My mother's voice, lower this time, pretending to care. "We're worried about you. The neighbors are talking. Please don't make this worse than it is." Then my father, monotone, "Come by when you calm down. We'll talk." I laughed under my breath. They wanted calm, not truth. I opened my laptop. The password-protected folder blinked open after a few tries. Inside were files I'd kept for years, emails, scanned receipts, photographs of checks I'd written for their emergencies. At the bottom sat a single audio file labeled Family Meeting 03-14. My hand hovered over the trackpad. I clicked play. Static. Then voices. "Clarets, crisp as ever, once Marcella's out of the picture, we'll transfer the deed. It'll look cleaner if the property's in Seraphine's name. Seraphine, she won't notice. She never does. Dad, she paid half the taxes. There'll be paperwork. Mom, then we'll tell her it's for her protection. She believes anything if you say it's sweet enough." I stopped the recording. My chest burned. The walls of my apartment suddenly felt too close, too small to contain what I'd just heard. Weeks ago, I'd sat in that very meeting, sipping coffee, pretending not to notice their side glances. I'd smiled when Mom said, "You're such a help, dear." I'd nodded when Seraphine chimed in about family transparency. I'd known something was wrong then. That's why I'd pressed record. I stared at the screen now, the file still open. The truth was no longer a secret. It was data. My reflection in the laptop monitor looked foreign, eyes sharper, spine straighter. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was done being the family buffer. Another message buzzed in. This time from an unknown number. "You'll regret making this public." I smiled. "Maybe," I whispered to myself, "but not today." I attached the video Ivy had sent and the audio file from March. Then I typed a short email. Subject, documentation request. Body, please find attached the material relevant to property case Ellison residence. Proceed immediately. I signed it, Marcella E. Then I hit send. Rain tapped harder against the windows. The apartment felt lighter, almost hollow, as if the weight I'd carried had evaporated with every click. On impulse, I opened the last voice memo my mother left. Sweetheart, she said, using that tone she reserved for manipulation, families fight. But dragging lawyers into this? That's uncalled for. What will people think? I closed my eyes. They'll think you picked the wrong daughter to underestimate. I saved her voicemail in a new folder labeled evidence. The morning light broke faintly through the gray clouds, casting the table in pale gold. The coffee had gone cold, but I took a sip anyway. It tasted bitter, and right. My phone buzzed again. Ivy. You okay? She texted. I typed back, better than I've ever been. Then I added, you didn't care if I was safe. Just that I wasn't in your way. I hit send, not to Ivy, but to my mother's number. For the first time in years, my hand didn't tremble. The documents printed slowly, one by one, pages thick with facts, timelines, signatures, dates. The soft hum of the printer was the only sound in my apartment, but inside me, something louder had begun, clarity. I stacked the papers carefully. Each sheet was weight, and I planned to let them feel it. The drive to my parents' house felt different this time. There was no hesitation in my hands. No second-guessing whether I should be here. They'd called it a family dinner. I knew better. There were no place settings. No roast in the oven. No wine glasses clinking in the kitchen. Just a long table. Empty, except for a laptop, a folder, and a sealed envelope. Ivy sat to my left, her phone face down but recording. Nadine lingered in the back corner, arms crossed, silent as always but present. She didn't need to speak. Her presence alone said, I see you. Claret walked in first. This better be quick, she muttered, smoothing her sweater like she was prepping for a church fundraiser. Seraphine followed, eyes darting. Her usual confidence had dimmed. I noticed she wasn't wearing any jewelry, not even the bracelet she'd posted about last week. Her heels clicked faster than usual, as if speed could cover guilt. Ellison entered last. Silent. He sat near the edge of the table, not quite beside anyone. I didn't stand. I didn't smile. I didn't call this dinner to eat, I said. I called it to clarify. Claret raised an eyebrow. Marcella, what is this? I pressed a button. The projector hummed to life. Ivy's video played on the white wall behind me. Me, stumbling. My father's hand gripping my wrist. Seraphine laughing. Claret turning away. The guests averting their eyes. The silence in the room deepened. Then my mother's voice, recorded weeks earlier, filled the space. Once Marcella's out of the picture, we can consolidate the deed. It'll look cleaner in Seraphine's name. Seraphine shifted in her chair. That's not what we meant. I held up a hand. Let's finish. A slideshow clicked on. Screenshots of texts. Emails. Legal notices. The hospital record showing my emergency contact left blank. The note my father signed approving a transfer of property, witnessed by no one. You didn't erase me by accident, I said, staring straight at Seraphine. You planned it. Seraphine stood suddenly. You're twisting everything. No, I replied. I'm just showing what you all refused to say out loud. Claret's hands trembled, just slightly. We did what was best for the family. For the image, I whispered. Ellison cleared his throat. She has the documents. There's no denying this now. Seraphine's face fell. Her phone lit up beside her. A text flashed from one of her sponsors. Her lips parted. I saw it land. She shoved back from the table and stormed out, heels snapping like thunder. Ivy glanced at her phone. Texted one line. Then turned the screen to me, sponsor dropped her. They saw the clip. I nodded once. No satisfaction. Just truth. Claret leaned forward, voice low. So what do you want? Money? An apology? I want distance, I said. And control over what's mine. She scoffed. You're overreacting. This is still your family. No, I said, calmly. This was my assignment. And I'm returning it. Nadine stepped forward, handing me a folder. Inside, a notarized document confirming the house transfer reversal, with my name restored as co-owner. I slid another page across to Claret. A legal amendment. Emergency contact forms. You're no longer listed. You're not my emergency anymore. You're not my mother in practice, just on paperwork. For a moment, no one moved. Claret stared at the paper, blinking fast. You're suing us? Ellison asked, voice flat. No, I said. I'm removing myself. I stood. My knees didn't shake this time. I'm not here to fight. I'm here to end it. Claret's lips pressed into a line. You'll regret this. I met her eyes. I regret not doing it sooner. No one followed me to the door. No one stopped me. I stepped outside into the gray evening. The rain hadn't started yet, but the clouds hung low, heavy with promises. I took one last look at the house. It didn't feel like home. It hadn't in a long time. But now it didn't hurt. I walked to my car. Ivy stood beside it. You okay? She asked. I'm free, I said. She smiled. About time. This wasn't revenge. It was release. 3 weeks later, the rain had turned to light fog over Asheville. The clinic lobby smelled like disinfectant and coffee, that sterile mix of fear and routine. I sat in a white-walled intake room, the kind where silence feels heavier than noise. A nurse with kind eyes handed me a clipboard. You can update your emergency contact here, she said, cheerful but detached, the way professionals are trained to sound. My pen hovered over the blank line. It felt symbolic, every form, every signature, every official record of who mattered. For years, I had written Claret Ellison without hesitation. It had been automatic, like breathing. This time, my hand shook slightly, but not from weakness. Slowly, deliberately, I wrote, Nadine Calloway. The ink bled a little into the paper fibers. I stared at it, letting the weight of those letters settle. It wasn't blood that saved me. It was someone who noticed I was fading. The nurse smiled faintly, unaware of the gravity of what I'd just done. That's all set, Miss Ellison. You're good to go. Miss Ellison. The name still sounded like a chain. Outside, the air was cool, thin, clean. I walked home with my coat zipped high and my heartbeat steady. Back at my apartment, everything felt smaller but clearer. The plants by the window leaned toward the light. The dog wagged his tail once, enough to acknowledge me before settling back on the couch. I fed him, poured myself tea, and opened the day's mail. Bills. Flyers. A pale blue envelope with no return address. Seraphine's handwriting. Perfect cursive, practiced for sponsorship notes. I didn't open it. I traced the edge of the envelope, feeling the grooves of her pen strokes. Then I set it aside on the counter, beside an unopened bag of sugar and a jar of honey. It stayed there all day. I wasn't angry anymore. Just uninterested. The apartment was quiet except for the hum of the fridge. My phone sat face down on the table, screen dark, notifications silenced. The peace wasn't dramatic, it was practical. Later that afternoon, Nadine stopped by. She brought a loaf of bread, still warm, and 2 mugs of coffee from the corner bakery. You didn't have to, I said. She shrugged. I wanted to. You eating enough? I smiled. More than before. We sat by the window. The rain started again, faint but steady. She didn't ask about my family, and I didn't bring them up. There was comfort in that, 2 people who didn't need to fill silence with noise. After a while, she said, You look different. Older? No. Lighter. I thought about that. I'm not angry anymore, I said finally. But I don't think I'll ever trust the same way again. Nadine stirred her coffee. Maybe that's not a flaw, she said softly. Maybe that's wisdom. We sat like that until the rain eased. When she left, she squeezed my hand once. No promises. No pity. Just quiet recognition. As evening crept in, I cleaned the kitchen. I folded towels. I let the dog out and stood by the doorway as he sniffed the wet grass. Across the street, someone's porch light flickered on. Inside, the unopened letter from Seraphine remained on the counter. I moved it into a drawer, not to forget it, but to stop it from taking up space. The light in the apartment shifted, turning everything gold for a moment. I walked to my bedroom, drawn by the way the sun caught the edges of the mirror. For years, I'd avoided looking at my reflection too long. I'd seen too much of their disappointment there. Too much of my own. Now, I stood still. The woman staring back wasn't fragile or forgotten. Her eyes were calm, her shoulders straight. There were lines around her mouth that hadn't been there before, but they looked earned. I thought of the girl who used to answer nurses' questions with certainty. Who do we call if you're hurt? My mom. That memory now felt like a story told to someone else. Family had once been a word that meant safety. Now it meant history. And history didn't have to define me. I ran a hand through my hair and smiled at my reflection, not the practiced kind I'd learned from my mother, but something smaller, real. The dog barked once from the living room, as if agreeing. I turned off the lights and sat at the edge of the bed. The window was open just enough to let the cool air drift in. There was no noise, no phone vibrating, no guilt gnawing at the back of my mind. Just quiet. And in that quiet, I finally understood something simple. They had taught me how to live without them. And for once, I finally breathed. Sometimes, the people who raised you teach you how to survive, by forcing you to live without them. And maybe that's the quiet power in walking away. Have you ever had to cut ties with family not out of anger, but out of necessity? Share your story in the comments. I read every one. And if you felt something from this journey, subscribe for more stories that speak the truths we've all kept quiet.